Good day, podcast community. We have a special guest this morning. So, Bruce Cebone is the first time we did it a while back, we lost the podcast. So now we're going to see if we can do a little bit better. Time always gets better. So, Bruce, tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve, and then we'll get into our podcast.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Pete, for having me on. I really appreciate it. Um, Towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about our last podcast because there was something that I left out that you wanted me to bring up. Anyway, so
Yes.
I am a board certified pastoral counselor and Christian counselor here in Kennesaw, Georgia. I have a practice here in Kennesaw called Endless Potential Counseling and Coaching. But I also serve as a pastoral counselor at Church of the Apostles, and I spend much of my time there. I have a master's degree in counseling. I am also certified in trauma therapy as well as grief trauma. So I primarily work 90 to 95% of my clients are men that I work with, and I work with guys that are anywhere from late 60s, 70s to 20. I think I have a 19-year-old right now that I'm working with right now. So, and a lot of my work is dealing with some of those traumas, the anxiety, the general depression that may be going on with that, and ultimately, Pete, what I find is most every guy has got the same issue, and that is that excuse me, issue is purpose. What's my
Yeah.
purpose? What am I here for? What's this all about? And when we don't have that kind of security within us, when we're not feeling that purpose, a lot of things can happen. We start getting very anxious. We start feeling lost. We start doing things that we wouldn't normally do, and behaviors that we wouldn't normally have. So, you know, much of my practice, we work for a little while on the anxiety, the depression, the trauma issues that may be there, and then as we go on, it's more about coaching and just kind of mentoring and discipling guys through to get them to that place where they can start functioning well. So and boundaries is a big part of that as
Oh,
we go.
yeah. I never knew what the word, how it related to relationships until I went through a boundaries class, and then I further dug in and did some more learning on boundaries. But before I go to boundaries, which I think is so critical, you said when you started out about purpose, and we went, actually, Larry and I went to the Special Forces Transition Foundation. And there was a gentleman that spoke there who had interrogated Saddam Hussein. And so we're talking, and he says, not him, but this was another gentleman. A lot of people will talk about the trauma that our vets face, that we're losing 22 vets a day to suicide. And just that just crushes your heart. But he said, certainly there's trauma in there. But the biggest thing in his work is when they transition out, they fail to get a purpose.
Yep.
And so you said that, he said that. He goes, I would say that when you're in the military, you have to have, like, what's going to be your next chapter in your life?
Sure.
What's your purpose?
Yep.
So I'm not shocked, but I'm amazed that you really defined it down to purpose. What would you say? Because I know you from let's see, well, a lot of different connections, and you helped me, and you absolutely told me exactly what the problem. I said, I like what you said. I won't get into anything, but you said, yeah, Pete, you can keep coming back to me and paying me, but hey, I don't know why you would do that. And I'm going like, well, that's true.
There you go.
I mean, no sense giving people money
That's right.
because you defined the problem like in one session. So I just want to tell our viewers how talented this gentleman is.
Thank you. I
I have
appreciate
known
that.
him even before that. Well, let's go back. I want to go to our viewers with
Hmm.
you served at the extension for quite
Hmm.
a while, and
Hmm.
we talked about the COVID influence on.
Hmm.
Would you kind of help our viewers to kind of take them through what isolation did to the mental health
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
to our society, and where those problems now are manifesting itself because we
Yeah.
had that isolation.
So this is going to be kind of anecdotal, but there's a lot of data that's out there that has proven a lot of this out. But for your viewers, the viewers that aren't familiar with the extension is a long-term treatment facility for homeless addicts and alcoholics. I started there as a chaplain in like 2015, 2016,
Hmm.
and wound up becoming a senior counselor until about 2021. So, and it was amazing work, amazing guys. Once you get to know them, I mean, there's the differences is how they cope with issues and the choices and decisions that they made, right?
Hmm.
That separates one guy from being in there and one guy not. But really great guys. And one of the great things about the extension was the alumni that were there and how often they would come in. Guys who had graduated from the program would roll in there on a daily basis at any time of day and just sit down and talk to the other residents there, encourage them, kind of let them know what their story was and how they did it and how they got through the extension and how long they've been clean and sober. And it was really good because the residents could feed off of that, right?
Hmm.
Guys that were in there for 2, 3 weeks could see guys that had gone through the 9 to 12 months and where they were and the success that they were having. And that was really inspiring for a lot of these guys. And what happens with COVID, and it's interesting because like um January, like December, end of December, uh middle of January, we had like 3 guys that went into the hospital um, with serious respiratory issues. We didn't know what it was at that point. One guy almost died, and we really didn't know what it was at that time. So, fast forward about a month or two, and then we find out that it's COVID, and everything begins to start locking down, and we're getting all kinds of air purifiers and all of a sudden we have to go through all these new kinds of protocols and there's a lot more paperwork and things like that. Bottom line is that a lot of the alumni were not allowed to come in. Right now they were doing AA meetings there. There was this big Thursday was called Power Hour where they would bring guys where it was like a graduation ceremony. They recognized new guys coming into the program and also recognized guys that were graduating from the program. And then it wound up being a regular full-fledged AA meeting. But so that shut down. So there wasn't any kind of interaction with the alumni coming in. We
Hmm.
had to separate. We had to separate the two different sections. We had oh man, now I can't remember what it was called. But we had basically like new residents, right? And
Right.
then we had the more tenured residents, and we had to split those up. So now you have not only do you have alumni coming in, but now you having experiences within the community being separated, right?
Hmm.
And guys aren't allowed to be there or eat with each other, and it becomes very isolated. So these guys don't get a sense of community. And I think I've said this to you before that the opposite of sobriety is not, or the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's community,
Right.
right? And when you're in community, you're able to share and be inspired and be able to lean on other people. And these guys weren't getting that.
Hmm.
And so we started experiencing, obviously a lot more guys that were dropping out. I think, between March of 2020 and April of 2021, when I left, I did 5 funerals. for guys that had basically had left the program and OD'd, or we had some guys that were using while they were in there. I mean, it got very crazy and very
Hmm.
hectic, and it was because of the isolation.
Yeah.
In my practice, I had a lot more people coming in because of the isolation that they were feeling,
Yeah.
right? And I was one of the few that was saying, no, I'm going to do face to face, because the online, the video is not going to work. I
Yeah.
need to do the face to face. Hey, if I get it, I get it, right? I mean, I'd had it twice. I got vaxxed. I got it twice after that, so I wasn't worried about it anymore. So
Yeah.
just having people be able to know that they could come in and have some kind of interaction. Obviously, I took proper precautions and things like that, but just the amount of isolation that was out there, right? And
Mhm.
parents calling me, hey, can you meet with my kid? They're going through all this. They're having difficulties in school, so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
it was a really, really difficult time. I'm glad we're beyond it, but there's still people that are dealing with it,
Yeah.
still people that are dealing with it, and
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
repercussions and the consequences of the isolation from it.
Yeah. I totally agree. When I was down at your church, the Church of Apostles, I was talking to Rand, and he mentioned, he goes, I don't know how it came up, but your name came up, and he mentioned that the most popular class is the boundaries class. So I never even knew what the heck the word, I mean, I know what the word is, but I never knew how it related emotionally. So for our viewers that may have never heard the words that you have to have boundaries in relationship, could you share with them what do you teach people, and how does that work to the mental health
Yeah.
of people in general?
Great question. So this it really sprouted, the boundaries class at Apostles really kind of sprouted from the boundaries classes I was teaching at the extension,
Hmm.
because people in addiction have no boundaries. Essentially, there's no boundaries, right? They just want to take, or give, or whatever it is, but there aren't any boundaries. um, Boundaries are essentially, in its easiest form, are guardrails that we set around ourselves
Hmm.
to protect ourselves from unhealthy habits or relationships in
Hmm.
our lives, right? So if we are prone to codependency, if we are prone to dysfunctional relationships, and we need to be healthier, we need to set up those boundaries. When people are walking out of addiction into recovery, they need to set up those boundaries, and
Hmm.
sometimes they need to be rigid boundaries, or they do need to be rigid boundaries where they're not letting toxic relationships back in, so they can deal with things. And all of us need to set up boundaries. It doesn't matter if you're in addiction or not. We all have issues. We've all got our stuff, our baggage that we need to, cleanse, and then be able to set up those boundaries around it so that it doesn't continue to, be an issue in our life. So, in its simplest sense, boundaries are guardrails that we set up to keep us healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah, that is, I'm glad you explained it like that, because it helps our viewers to really establish the importance of boundaries.
Yep.
And I agree with you. And I also, that when you're talking about community, so let's take boundaries and community. What kind of similarities do I call them like cousins. What would our viewers be able I mean, you have to have community. It's so
Hmm.
critical, but you also have to have boundaries. So could you kind of
Yeah.
explain how they maybe work together?
Sure. So I think what boundaries can do from the standpoint of community is, when we have healthy boundaries, we have healthy community, because we will gravitate towards the people that we feel are going to be safe and healthy, right? When
Mhm.
we have the proper boundaries set up, we can determine who are going to be toxic or not good, right?
Mhm.
in our relationships, in our community. So let me kind of give it to you on a broader scale. We were talking about purpose earlier. And what I do is when I get with guys about purpose and we really start talking about purpose,
Hmm.
specifically God's purpose for us, right?
Hmm.
That when we can begin to define what purpose is, we begin to set up a target, right? Without purpose, that target is all over the place, right? And it's difficult to hit a moving target. But when we begin to determine what purpose looks like, that target becomes static. It's there. We have something to shoot at. We have something that we can go forward in. Now, what we do now is now we set up those guardrails. Now we set up those boundaries in our lives that are focused on that purpose so that anything that is going to deviate from that purpose or keep us from being able to accomplish that, and with purpose, God-given purpose, we're never going to, see what the end of it is until we
Right.
go home, obviously. But we have a path, right? We have a road that we're traveling down. We put up these guardrails to keep the negative influences out, and then we set up on ramps, right? On different kinds of boundaries to set up on ramps to allow people in that we know are going to be good for us, right?
Hmm.
People that we know and feel comfortable that are going to be investing in us, right? Um, I have, a couple of older guys that invest in me, right? As mentors, and we begin to recognize guys that maybe are younger than us that we can invest in them. So we begin to determine who's in our community that are healthy for us to
Hmm.
be able to go down this road and hit that target of purpose. And I think that's how I believe is the best way to identify boundaries in community.
Man, I love how you really shared that in a way because I think our viewers can get a better sense of how they work together. And I do,
Mhm.
if I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times, is when you're looking at a life of addiction, it's the old relationships and establishing new relationships which are healthier. And it's so hard to tell your friends that put you are around that, put you in that kind of environment that you have to now look at the future. Because if you go back, it's like we are who the 5 people we hang around the most. So if
Mhm.
you're hanging around people that are doing unhealthy things,
Mhm.
it's going to make sense that you're going to do it. So
Mhm.
you have to, you know,
Mhm.
bridge your way to, which is hard because habits are habits. And I think
Absolutely.
that's the,
Yep.
the biggest
Yep.
challenge is saying, okay, Joe, I not saying it, but you have to say in your mind, my association with my past has got to be different because I'm establishing a new identity,
Sure.
in my
Sure.
future, and that's
Yep.
got to be with
Yep.
healthy people.
Yeah. And
I
and and it go, it's also we're not just talking about, people in addiction. I mean, there's
Yes,
plenty of
totally.
people who have grown up in dysfunctional families, right?
Yes,
That don't know how to properly deal with their emotions, right?
yes.
And so when we don't know how to handle our emotions or deal with our emotions, process and cope with our emotions, we don't generally set up boundaries. We become codependent. There's usually some kind of trauma there, and so now we're in this place where our life is kind of falling apart, and we don't know what to do. And
Mhm,
if we set up boundaries, a lot of people are afraid to set up boundaries because they think that other people are going to be upset with them, right? So the people pleaser mentality,
mhm.
and that's just not true. It's about protecting us. And one of the hardest things about setting up boundaries as well, kind of to your point, is we do have to change a lot of things, and that means oftentimes that we have to cut out specific people that are toxic in our lives, right? And that can be very difficult. Now, it may not that may not mean that we cut them out completely forever, but for a period of time until we can get to a place of being more healthy and moving in the right direction or towards that target, right?
Yes.
Target of purpose.
I was so kind of excited in a curiosity way when we decided to put this together this morning. So I usually ask, initially, like, what got you in to coaching, therapy, counseling? Did
Yeah.
you? I know you were a good golfer because we did after that last
Was
podcast.
was is the
You
key word.
told me you dropped a bombshell on me, and I was like, "What?" We'll get to that in just
Yeah,
a second. But
I would. That was
how
a
how
yeah. I was
how did you
was the
get
key word.
into counseling?
Yeah.
What?
So I got out of college and I went into sales and marketing because that's what my dad's dad did, and that was just like that's what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm,
It took me about 27 years to realize that I wasn't that good at it, right?
mm-hmm,
But what I was good at was I was really good at building relationships, right?
mm-hmm.
And so even though I didn't have a lot of people buying from me, I had a lot of people that I had good relationships with, right?
Yeah.
So I realized I was good at that. And as I began to grow in my relationship with the Lord, um, I got into men's ministry. I had a passion for working with guys because I was so messed up.
Uh-huh.
And there were guys that were investing in my life. And that's something that God was just kind of leading me to. So I just began building relationships with guys and working with guys and kind of ministering to them. And I really felt like it was something that I wanted to do. That it was a heart thing, that this was a pull that God had on my heart. And so, I served as a men's pastor at a couple different churches locally here, and we started a church, and I was just not happy in what I was doing in my career. And my wife and I talked about it, and I decided to go back to school. I had gotten laid off and was doing this really cruddy job, and decided to go back to school, get my master's in counseling, open up a practice, and here we are. So. And it's the same thing. I mean, it's when I was at the extension, I felt really um, uh, I didn't feel like I had the tools or the skills to be able to do the work there.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't. I had struggled with drugs and alcohol in the past, but I didn't consider myself an addict. I had maybe some of the same experiences some of these guys had, but it wasn't the same. And I went to my director at the time and I said, "Hey, man, I don't feel qualified for this. I'm not an addict. I'm not an alcoholic." And he said, well, do you need to have cancer to be a good cancer doctor? And that kind of changed
Yeah.
everything. And what I began to realize is that it was just about building relationship, right? And that these guys just needed relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that comes in to see me is about relationship. Somewhere in their life, they are lacking relationship, right? And for guys, we lack relationship big time. We don't know how to develop relationship. We don't necessarily know how to invest in relationship because for most of us, we've never seen it modeled out,
Yeah.
right? I mean, uh, personally, you know, I saw my dad had a lot of friends, right? But I didn't see my dad have real deep relationships or what
Mm-hmm.
that looked like, right? Um, it wasn't until I saw guys pouring into me to understand what deep, good male spiritual relationships looked like, right? And essentially, that's all I do, Pete, is just build relationships with
Mm-hmm.
people to have them be able to get to a trust level where we can start digging into the things that really matter so that we can deal with them and get over them and start moving on. And then they can be the men of God that God wants them to be.
Oh, I love that. I know. Just for our viewers, it was funny because I'm good friends, golfing buddies with Rand, and so I had asked him. I said, Rand, who can you recommend? And so he recommended you. And so, I mean, that was so good. I can't tell you how important after you were listening to my mess, how you told me exactly. I mean, I've told your story at least 150 times.
Well, I
And
appreciate that.
it just, Yeah, it speaks to who you are, and one Rand could have recommended anybody on this planet,
Rand
because
knows a lot of people, so he
he
could
knows
have.
everybody. So, and then I knew that you were a golfer in college and stuff. So it was like, I wondered if Rand knew that there was a link between golf and what I needed at the time. I don't know, but it was kind of cool when all of a sudden afterwards you dropped that golf bomb on me. And I still laugh about it because I did a golf podcast to start off. I do it,
Yeah,
but not really like I
yeah,
was, because I wasn't playing golf, so I wasn't like getting excited
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. So I was like, it was a disconnect. But let's because I know we've got to wind down here. So you played golf in college?
I did. I
Okay.
did. I played at a small state school, Western Connecticut State University.
Okay.
So in up in Connecticut, yeah, and I played 4 years. Was captain 1 year, I think, and
Hmm.
um, I was pretty good back then. Back
Dang,
then,
that's so good. And then you're starting to play more now, or did you go through a phase when it kind of got
yeah, I
put in?
think now it's kind of funny because golf had always been competitive, right?
Mhm.
So when I stopped playing, when I stopped playing, it was because it just wasn't fun, right?
Yeah.
Because it was too competitive. And then I picked it, I started playing again just to try and have fun. And I got involved
Hmm.
in a men's league at Cobblestone, and it got competitive again. And I got upset and stopped doing that. And now, Pete, what golf is for me, golf is sanctuary for me, right?
Yeah.
Like I can go out now and and it doesn't matter what I shoot really.
Yeah.
And I just go out to be on the golf course and, sometimes being alone, sometimes playing with other guys, but just to get away and have it be self-care right now.
Yeah.
Golf is frustrating enough anyway, too. So,
Yeah. I think I learned to have a temper on the golf course. When in my younger years, I broke more clubs.
yeah.
And
Well, I tell
learned,
you what, I tell
I
you what,
tell you, yeah,
you can
it
tell a
is
lot about it. You
frustrating.
can tell a lot about a person on the
Oh
golf
yeah.
course. You really can.
Totally. Now I am as cool as a cucumber. And I do see when I play match play, I read body language and I know when somebody is kind of losing it. And
Hmm.
that's and
Hmm.
the competition kicks in. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, I got it
Hmm.
now.
There you
Because you
go.
can tell by body language when people emotionally don't handle it. And then Ram was on a podcast with Luke, and it was an
Hmm.
unbelievable one, but he talked about the mental discipline
Hmm.
and the emotional discipline that these tour players have to have. And you think that is just in everything, because if you're going out there to play a fun round of golf and you're throwing clubs in the woods and you're, going, I think there's some emotional problems that you're dealing
No
with,
doubt.
because
No doubt.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be a fun game, not
Yep.
try to kill somebody with a golf club, you
Yep.
know?
Yep. No
So
doubt.
I would love, because we now have On the Green, which is a golf podcast, but
Hmm.
I also would love to dig deeper in to really what we talked briefly about boundaries, because I'm in a senior facility and I think about half of the people here need to learn about boundaries, because it's hilarious now that I'm on the other side of understanding boundaries. I see that people never learned
Hmm.
boundaries.
Hmm.
And so you
Hmm.
have to have guardrails, like you
Yep.
said,
Absolutely.
in
Yep.
everything that you do. If you don't, it gets all jacked up
Yep. Yep.
because of what it is. Now, would you tell our viewers how can they get a hold of you? Because I will tell them before you say something.
Yeah.
If you are out there and your purpose, you're dealing with emotional trauma, whatever you want to say, you need to be calling Bruce. And because he's right here. I mean, because the first time I went over there, I missed it by a week. And I was over there and it was raining. And I'm over there going, "Hey, where are you? Hey, it's next
Yeah,
week."
I can look out the front doors and
I know. I'm going.
see your building. So
It was hilarious, but that's another day. So tell our viewers, how can they get a hold of you?
yeah. So the best way to get a hold of me is going to be by email, and my email address is Bruce at endlesspotential.us. If you want to call me, it's 678-503-8017. That's my office line. So, but in general, hitting me up on email is going to be the best way. Um, I am at Church of the Apostles Mondays through Thursdays. And then I am here at my office in Kennesaw. For people that are in Kennesaw or the greater Marietta area, I'm in Ridenauer, up on top of the hill, over there by Academy Sports and CarMax.
Mhm.
And excuse me. And so I'm here Fridays and Saturday mornings. So
Awesome.
and
Well,
I will make, I'll tend to make arrangements to meet during the week later on in the afternoon if I've got the time.
I want our viewers to share this with people they know that Bruce can help and assist, because, I'm a firm believer in, I heard somebody say this, I don't know who it was. We all need therapy, regardless, and we need it in so many areas. But I know that maybe you can comment on this before you go. Guys tend to think, "Oh, we got it all figured out," and we think of it as a weakness. But as my friend was saying, it's really a strength. It's admitting that you don't have it all together. And so getting somebody that's professionally trained to walk you through the mess of life, and it gets messy at times. So,
Yeah.
just for our viewers to share this with people that you think it could be helpful for them to hear this and really understand and put it in the right mindset.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely true. I think we all need to have some kind of therapy, counseling, accountability, right?
Yes.
So I'm fortunate in that I've got, there's a few guys in my life that I'm close to that will listen to me, right? That will listen to my stuff and will
Mhm.
help me kind of walk through my stuff, right? Um, but there's a lot of guys that aren't willing to share the intimate details of their
Yeah.
life with other guys, right?
Yep.
And for them, I would suggest then go to a therapist, right? Go to a counselor that's going to keep everything confidential. You'll be able to, you know, um, puke, so to speak, get
Yeah.
out your stuff and be able to help you, right? It's important that
Yeah.
we do
No,
that,
it is.
especially now, especially
Yeah.
with all the stuff that's going on. Coming
Yep.
out of COVID is still an issue. Just when times start getting difficult, we start taking things on differently and carrying
Mhm.
bigger loads. So, and it doesn't mean that somebody's completely messed up and they've got to go see,
Yeah.
a counselor a couple times a week. Most of the guys that I see every other week. There's a lot of guys I see once a month just
Mhm.
because we're doing maintenance, right? They're in a
Yeah.
good place, and
Totally.
if things get out of hand, they know that place where, or they know that things are starting to get out of hand,
Yeah.
and they'll give me a call and I'll get them in here. So, um, it's just important that you have that outlet to be
Yeah. And
able to
we
do that.
look at just life. We get our cars tuned up. Why wouldn't we want to get ourselves tuned up?
Absolutely.
It's not like we're
Yep.
not rebuilding the engine, we're just getting a tune up.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
so emotionally and through life, we need a tune up. So,
Absolutely.
Bruce, what
Yep.
would you say? What would be the one thing as we close, the one thing you would want our viewers to take home from our podcast today?
Um, I would say the one thing would be to take a look at, if you're feeling like your life is kind of circling out of control right now, where do you need to protect yourself, right?
Mhm.
Where are the places that you need to set up boundaries would be number one. Number two, in the larger sense to that would be, do you feel a sense of purpose right now?
Mhm.
Or have you lost that? And if you've lost it, why? Did you have purpose and why did the purpose go away?
Mhm.
right? Did you fulfill purpose? Because I believe that we have. And if we're still walking on this side of the earth, then God's still working in us to fulfill that purpose that he has for us. So,
Yes.
and I think that's the biggest thing is looking at purpose, right? What is our purpose? Do we have purpose? Have we lost our sense of purpose? Did we ever
Mhm.
have it, right? And then we can set those boundaries around that.
Well, that was well said. Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate you taking the time to
Thanks,
share
Peter.
with our viewers a
My
very
pleasure.
important topic. Thank you again and have a great weekend.
You
Thank
do the
you.
same, buddy. Thank you very much.
Bye now.